Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? Reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived.
California Governor Gavin Newsom there from his address to his state yesterday. Will include the full talk at the end of this morning's podcast. It's Wednesday, June 11th, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch. Rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. We are indeed seeing stark differences between the way California's governor is reacting to Donald Trump's escalations and the way Governor Greg Abbott of Texas is genuflecting before the dear leader. Since we last talked, Trump has deployed 700 active duty Marines to the streets of Los Angeles, where they will be present today alongside National Guard troops forced into action by Trump earlier this week, prompting the reaction from Governor Newsom. In Texas, not resistance, but dutiful parroting of Trump from Governor Abbott, who has become the first in the nation to beat Trump to the punch and activate the National Guard against his own citizens. Jan Zhuang at the New York Times writes that Abbott is particularly focused on protests planned today in San Antonio, but other major cities where significant protest activity has been seen this week, including Dallas, Houston, and Austin, are certainly on the table, as are the dozens of No Kings protests and rallies set to happen across the state on Saturday. San Antonio Mayor Ron Nirenberg and City Manager Eric Walsh are to give details on the city's plan to support peaceful demonstrations while ensuring public safety in a news conference later this morning. We'll follow up on that, of course, but zooming back out to Trump, the full context isn't about public safety. It's not even about immigration. It's about his fucking birthday. Andrew Feinberg at The Independent says Trump has threatened to forcibly stop any protests that disrupt the North Korean and Russian-style military parade planned in D.C. on Saturday, including tanks and planes, jarringly breaking from U.S. norms that avoid overt military displays. Trump has long viewed protests as personal attacks and has advocated for violent crackdowns. He once asked why troops couldn't just shoot protesters in the legs during 2020 racial justice protests. He also suggested invoking the 1807 Insurrection Act to deploy military forces against demonstrators, casting protests in California as insurrectionist in nature. Recalling the scenes from the first Trump term, he does appear to be spoiling for a crackdown. Rachel Maddow at MSNBC notes that Trump's order to federalize the National Guard on Monday was not specific to California. It applies nationwide, but also, quote, despite what Trump wants, the protests won't stop. In fact, this coming Saturday, we will likely see the largest protests yet against Trump and his administration. As the president holds his military parade in Washington, people across the country are set to take part in more than 1,800 rallies planned nationwide, peaceful, organized, and united, unquote. It certainly appears that this weekend is the moment. It's time to show up, be loud, and be proud. And I know we say this over and over, but it's never been more true or important than it is right now. These events in the major cities of Texas are likely to see massive police presence and possible National Guard presence. That's going to be scary. And that's the intent, to intimidate you and at the same time to agitate you. There are those among us who are quite simply looking for trouble and see these events as an opportunity. It's on each of us to maintain that peaceful, organized, and united front against fascism at this key moment. Don't do anything dangerous, don't do anything illegal, and don't let anyone talk you into crossing the line that Donald Trump and Greg Abbott seem to want you to cross. Maddow says, quote, Trump has no idea what to do with the sustained, growing, intractable, and indomitable protest and opposition of the American people against him, so he's decided to try to stop it by using the army. What we're learning now more than ever is that the movement against Trump is unstoppable, unquote. Latest on that Republican plan to redraw Texas's congressional maps in an attempt to move the goalposts ahead of what's looking to be a bad midterm cycle for the MAGA GOP in 2026. Jeremy Wallace at the Houston Chronicle writes that there's actually an ongoing court battle raging right now over the last round of redistricting the Republicans imposed on Texas in 2023. Civil rights groups and the Texas Attorney General's office have been battling in federal court in El Paso over whether the 23 maps intentionally weakened Black and Hispanic voting power. Texas gained 2 new congressional seats due to population growth that year, you might recall. That growth largely driven by Latinos, yet the final maps favor Republicans 25-13 and reduce Hispanic majority districts. The state defends the maps as constitutional, while voting and civil rights groups, including LULAC, argue they underrepresent Latino voters. Wallace theorizes that this ongoing legal battle over the last maps they dreamed up might make it a little awkward to call a special session to do it all over again now. But this is what Trump wants, so we await the governor's next move. Owen Dahlkamp and Natalia Contreras with VoteBeat and the Texas Tribune go a bit further into the GOP plan itself, which remains nebulous at best. That meeting on Monday night in D.C. of Texas Republican lawmakers apparently saw significant hesitation, with many of the group fearing the plan could backfire in 2026 by overextending Republican strength. No draft maps have been shown yet. As far as the legality of the plan, the Texas state constitution doesn't specify timing for redistricting. The redrawing of maps is left to the discretion of the governor and the legislature. So, while doing so without new census data to justify it is certainly a brazen power grab by Republicans' own admission, it appears that it would be legal in Texas. Still, Justin Levitt, an election law professor at Loyola Marymount University, adds that on a practical level, it's a bad idea. Quote, "If the people think that their representatives have done a bad job, when the lines change, they're not voting on those representatives anymore. New people are voting on those representatives," unquote. Not that that's important to the MAGA types who very simply wish to stay in power. The Trump team hopes that by shifting more Republican voters into Democratically leaning districts, they'll have a better chance of flipping seats from blue to red. Of course, that makes those red districts more vulnerable to blue flips in turn, but that will require solid, hardworking Democrats to run great campaigns in those districts. Either way, the Texas Democratic Party faces both a massive challenge and a massive opportunity. The Texas Republican congressional delegation is set to meet on all of this again tomorrow. Our mission at Progress Texas is to counter the conservative disinformation machine, but they far outmatch us in funding. Oil and tech billionaires and religious right-wing activist groups spend a lot of money keeping their audiences in the dark. If you've come to appreciate the light that we shine on important political news in Texas on a daily, ongoing basis, please know that our regular, everyday listeners form a key component of our funding, and if that's you, we could use your support as a monthly contributor, and no amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks to Leslie O'Laughlin, Jacqueline Stewart, and Megan Vassbinder, all of whom have joined the team lately. We appreciate all of you very, very much. While you're at our website, make sure and grab the merch to match the progressive values at our web store. Y'all Means All, Revolution, and our most popular Humans Against Ted Cruz t-shirts are all waiting for you there, all union printed right here in Texas. Great stickers and more as well, all at progresstexas.org. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit, rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media in action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you again tomorrow morning. And again, the full remarks on the situation in Los Angeles from yesterday from California Governor Gavin Newsom.
I want to say a few words about the events of the last few days. This past weekend, federal agents conducted large-scale workplace raids in and around Los Angeles. Those raids continue as I speak. California is no stranger to immigration enforcement, but instead of focusing on undocumented immigrants with serious criminal records and people with final deportation orders, a strategy both parties have long supported, this administration is pushing mass deportations, indiscriminately targeting hardworking immigrant families, regardless of their roots or risk. What's happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested. A 4-year-old girl taken. Families separated. Friends quite literally disappearing. In response, everyday Angelenos came out to exercise their constitutional right to free speech and assembly, to protest their government's actions. In turn, the state of California and the city and county of Los Angeles sent our police officers to help keep the peace. And with some exceptions, they were successful. Like many states, California is no stranger to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly and with our own law enforcement. But this, again, was different. What then ensued was the use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets, illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose. As the news spread throughout LA, anxiety for family and friends ramped up. Protests started again. By night, several dozen lawbreakers became violent and destructive. They vandalized property. They tried to assault police officers. Many of you have seen the video clips of cars burning on cable news. If you incite violence, I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated, full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces, not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? I ask everyone, take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself, Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live and die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, he said it best. In a democracy, the most important office, with all due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, and it's certainly not governor. The most important office is office of citizen. At this moment, we all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.